Chapter 13, question 22, gives you some descriptions and asks you to connect those to a disaccharide. Now the first one is not a reducing sugar, and this one you wouldn't have to pay too much attention to, but the one of the three disaccharides that's not a reducing sugar is sucrose. A reducing sugar is a sugar that has an aldehyde or a ketone that is constantly flipping back and forth when you go from the straight chain to the ring. If you remember in the structure for sucrose, you can see that up here. In this structure for sucrose, the glycosidic bond is locking these two monosaccharides into a ring. So they never come undone, and you never have an aldehyde or ketone that you can reduce. So this is not a reducing sugar. Remember, reduction is the opposite of oxidation. It's where you remove bonds to oxygen. Compare that with something, one of the other disaccharides. Here, this carbon right here comes undone. The ring forms and then breaks, and then forms again and then breaks. And when this breaks, this oxygen, that bond to that alcohol, turns into a bond to a ketone or an aldehyde. In this case, an aldehyde. And so you have the aldehyde that you can reduce, so this is a reducing sugar. In other words, if you're ever given the structure for a disaccharide and you want to know whether it's a reducing or sugar or not, look at the carbon or the oxygen in the ring, look at the OH next to that. If that's free, if there's an OH there, in at least one place in the whole disaccharide, then it's a reducing sugar, because this bond can break, and when it does, this turns into a double bond to the oxygen, which can be reduced. But if in both of the rings, the carbon to the right of the oxygen doesn't have an OH on it, then it's not a reducing sugar. So that's that, but that is not that's maybe a little more complex than is sometimes necessary in principles of chemistry. Okay, composed of 2 glucose units. That is in the definition for maltose that you would definitely want to know. Maltose has 2 glucoses connected. Also called milk sugar, that is lactose. And sometimes you'll see people described as lactose intolerant. That's that you can't digest the disaccharide lactose in milk sugar. Hydrolysis, that's if you break it apart by adding water. So you put something in water and it breaks apart. It gives glucose and fructose. The disaccharide made up of glucose and fructose is sucrose. Oops. Sucrose is table sugar, the white stuff that we're used to seeing in sugar cubes. Sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose. Fructose is the sweetest of the monosaccharides. It's the sugar that's in fruit, and that's one of the reasons why table sugar is so sweet.